Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the absolutely fascinating science, neuroscience, and psychology behind why we deceive others, and let's be honest, why we sometimes deceive ourselves. Deception is this wild concept that's captivated philosophers and psychologists for literally thousands of years. But today, we're not looking at it through some heavy moral lens. We're looking at it purely through the science. So get comfortable and let's explore the anatomy of a lie.
Okay, let's kick things off by asking a very personal question that you might not even know the real answer to. Think about it for just a second. If you had to guess how many times you tell a lie in a single day, what number pops into your head? 1? 5? Maybe you consider yourself a totally honest person and you're thinking 0. Well, the science definitely says otherwise. Research conducted by American psychologist Robert S. Feldman in 2002 yielded this absolutely staggering number. He found that, on average, we actually tell 2 to 3 lies in a typical 10-minute conversation. Yeah, 10 minutes. Other studies, like the ones by social psychologist Bella M. DiPaolo, suggest that people average at least 2 lies a day as an absolute baseline. The reality is, deception is deeply, deeply woven right into our everyday interactions.
So now that your assumptions about your own honesty are completely challenged, let's map out our journey for this explainer. We're going to cover 1. Everybody lies. 2. The lying brain. 3. Pinocchio syndrome. 4. How we learn to lie. And finally, 5. Pathological lying, mythomania. All right, section 1. Everybody lies. The everyday deception. When we look at the psychology behind why we lie on a daily basis, it's rarely about some grand conspiracy. We actually lie mostly to protect our self-esteem, to gain a tiny advantage, or just to avoid conflict. But mostly, we use it for politeness. Think about it. Someone bakes you a terrible tasting cake and you enthusiastically go, "Oh wow, this cake is amazing." Or a coworker you find kind of annoying asks if they're bothering you and you immediately reply, "No, not at all." These little white lies are basically our way of maintaining social peace and making sure we don't do permanent damage to our relationships. Moving right along to section 2, the lying brain, the neuroscience of deception. You see, telling the truth is actually our brain's default, sort of lazy state. It requires very low cognitive resources. It's easy. Lying, on the other hand, is some serious mental heavy lifting. First, you have to know the truth. Then you literally have to actively suppress it. On top of that, you have to invent a plausible alternative scenario, carefully monitor your listeners' reactions, and then adjust your whole story on the fly. All of this intense planning causes massive activation in your prefrontal cortex. That's the front part of your brain responsible for complex decision-making. In fact, brain imaging using fMRI scans proves that it actually takes a measurable amount of extra time for our brains to formulate a lie compared to just simply stating a truth. So here is a crucial point uncovered by a really remarkable 2016 study published in Nature Neuroscience. It looked at how the brain actually adapts to dishonesty over time. Researchers found that when participants told their very first lie for personal gain, boom, there was a massive burst of activity in the amygdala, which is the brain's emotional center that processes fear, anxiety, and guilt. But as they repeated the lies, something fascinating happened. The amygdala became desensitized. Its response drastically dropped off, which practically eliminated those feelings of guilt altogether. This brilliantly illustrates how small lies literally and physically alter the brain's responses. They act as this ultimate slippery slope. By dulling the emotional friction of guilt in the amygdala, telling small, seemingly insignificant lies actually trains your brain. It makes it significantly easier to tell massive lies later on without feeling a single thing. Pretty wild, right? Which leads us to section 3, Pinocchio syndrome, a medical mystery. I want you to meet Mr. Pinocchio. That was the nickname given by doctors back in 1993 to a 52-year-old man in Strasbourg, France. And his case was absolutely extraordinary. Whenever this man tried to lie in his business meetings, he would shockingly pass out or suffer epilepsy-like seizures right there in the room, just instantly. Upon examination, doctors discovered the truly bizarre cause. He had a walnut-sized tumor resting right on his amygdala.
This tumor was basically increasing the excitability of his emotional center. Because lying requires so much emotional regulation and intensely triggers the amygdala, the simple act of attempting a deception was literally causing his brain to short circuit, triggering a seizure at the exact moment he told a lie. The crazy part? Once doctors surgically removed the tumor, his Pinocchio syndrome completely vanished. It just goes to show you how incredibly physical the act of lying truly is inside our heads. Let's look at Section 4. How do we learn to lie? Developmental milestones of deception. So, looking at this timeline, deceptive behaviors can actually appear as early as 6 months old. But formulating a real, structured lie around age 4 or 5, that's actually considered a major developmental milestone by psychologists. Now, you might be wondering, why is lying a milestone? Well, it proves a child has successfully developed what's called a theory of mind. They suddenly realize that other people have totally different thoughts and perspectives than they do, and, here's the kicker, that they can manipulate that hidden information. Empathy and lying actually develop from the exact same cognitive root. Interestingly enough, a 2015 study in the Netherlands showed that our ability to craft and maintain lies peaks in young adulthood, right around ages 18 to 29, and then begins a steady decline after age 45 as our cognitive agility starts to change. Okay, on to our final topic, Section 5, pathological lying, mythomania, when lying becomes a disease. This brings us to mythomania, which is pathological lying. And look, we're not just talking about avoiding a parking ticket or being polite about a bad cake anymore. This is an uncontrollable, chronic compulsion to lie. Mythomania often stems from deep psychological roots, things like childhood neglect, a highly critical family environment, severe trauma, or just deep-seated feelings of low self-worth. Essentially, the person feels that their true self is entirely unacceptable to the outside world. Because these individuals lie not just for some immediate material gain, but to create an entirely false identity just to make themselves feel valuable. It creates massive, massive destruction in their lives. They lose the trust of family, they ruin relationships, and they constantly jeopardize their careers. Sometimes it gets so bad they even forget what's real and what's fabricated, blindly believing their own fiction. And treating this? It isn't easy. It usually requires intensive, long-term cognitive behavioral therapy to address those underlying emotional voids and to really practice impulse control. Patients exhibiting mythomania showcase some highly distinct symptoms. You'll notice this constant dramatization, like they're either the ultimate shining hero of an exaggerated success story or the ultimate tragic victim of a drama. When confronted or criticized, their defensiveness is extreme and often super aggressive. And perhaps the most exhausting part, they are continually trapping themselves in a vicious psychological cycle. Every single lie they tell immediately demands the creation of another lie just to maintain the fragile illusion of their fabricated reality. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this profound thought from Dr. Azam Ak's research that perfectly sums up the inescapable nature of deception. Saying we never lie is, ironically, the absolute biggest lie we can tell. It is a fundamental, deeply wired part of the human cognitive experience. So, reflecting on the heavy cognitive lifting in the prefrontal cortex, the slippery slope of the amygdala, and all the fascinating psychology we've just uncovered together, I challenge you to ask yourself honestly, what white lies have you already told today? And more importantly, why did you tell them? Thank you so much for exploring the anatomy of a lie with me. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.